Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Hello everyone.
So good night.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, good. So today I will explain to you all my presentation about my research. Okay, maybe I just directly go to my screen. Okay, so everyone, my research is about effect of talking chips technique on student speaking skill improvement. So the first chapter is introduction, and the first background of the problem. So speaking is usually regarded as the core skill in learning foreign language, and that is what students want to be able to do. Um, Murcia 2001, as quoted by Arba'in 2014, states that speaking as a second language or a foreign language that is often seen as the most demanding of the four skills. And managing good speaking skills in English has been used as a mandatory requirement for employment in large companies nowadays. As we know, many companies requires good speaking skills. And the gap here is there are so many students that have difficulties with speaking in English. And then the next, the identification of the problem. Okay, so some students in SMA Pembangunan UNP have low speaking skill, and almost all students do not practice speaking. The teachers still use conventional methods in teaching speaking. And the method given by the teacher does not encourage student motivation to practice. And there is no media that can help students to practice their speaking. Almost all students in the English department rarely use English to speak. Almost all students are afraid of being uh, ridiculed by their peers. So that's the identification of the problem and the limitation of the problem. This research will only focus on improving one of four components in English, namely the speaking component, and using the talking chips technique. And in the next, the formulation of the problem. Will students who are taught using the talking chips technique have better speaking skills than the students who are taught using conventional skills? Then the research question are what is the effect of using talking chips as media on student speaking skill at SMA Pembangunan UNP? Can talking chips be the medium for assist student in practicing their speaking? And research hypothesis is the student who will be taught using talking chips technique will experience an increase in student speaking skill compared to students who are taught using conventional skill. And the purpose of this research is to illustrate how the talking chips technique can improve the speaking skills of SMA Pembangunan students. Here, here is the significance of the research. First, it can be contributed to English teacher who teach English subject, especially in Indonesia or even throughout the world, as a reference for their material. And it can also be reference for other researchers who will do research about talking chips technique. And here are the definition of the key term. First is effectiveness. Effectiveness is a method that we can apply to make our work being better in short amount of time. And then talking chips, it is a technique which we use a car that have several themes that we use to talk. And then speaking is the oral activity that we use to communicate with others. And then skill is the ability of the each person. And then improvement is getting better and better. Okay, next, chapter 2 is review of related theories. So here are several theory about speaking. First, the nature of speaking. Flucher, 2003, states speaking is an ability taken for granted, which is learning through process of socialization through communication. And then the speaking component. Thornbury, 2005, state that students need to know and acquire several components of speech in order to have good speaking skills. They are the ability to know the meaning and the use of the right words and words, pronounce sentence correctly, and express ideas smoothly. And then the function of speaking. Richard, 2008, that there is a three-part first version of speaking function: talk as interaction, talk as transaction, and talk as performance. And type of speaking here, the theory of type of speaking, Brown, 2001, states speaking can be classified into types of monologue and dialogue. Okay, the next theory is about teaching speaking. Brown, 2007, defines teaching as showing or helping someone to learn how to do something, giving instruction, guiding in research if something provides knowledge, and causing to know or understand. Noonan, 2003, teaching speaking is teaching English learners to produce speech patterns and English sound using word and sentence stress, intonation patterns, and second language rhythms. Choosing the right words and sentence in accordance with the social right. And then the theory talking chips. Uh, as stated by Masito and Laxmi Dewi in his book Learning Strategies 2009, 240 and 4 and 40, the learning model of talking chip is a model of jingling buttons developed by Spender Kagan, 1992. Mhm. And here is review of previous study. So the first study was conducted by Shafriaddin, whose study was entitled "The Use of the Speaking Chip Technique in Improving Student Speaking Achievement." He applied the chip talking technique to class 10 in one of the high school in Bandung in 2013. And then the second study was previously carried out by Hardianti, Roxantiningsih, and Setyaningsih, whose studies were titled "Using Talking Chips to Increase Student Participation and EFL Classes." They applied this technique in SMA Negeri 5 Surakarta in class 10-5 in 2012-2013 academic year. So here is the conceptual framework. First is up to experiment student speaking. We do a pre-test at the beginning, and then we divide the student to experimental group and control group. And then later we use method talking chip as media and use conventional media. And then later we pause the test and we compare the findings. Okay, here's the theoretical hypothesis. First, alternative hypothesis, or HA. Students who are taught using talking chips media have better speaking skill than students who are taught using conventional skill. And here, second, hypothesis 0, HO. Students who are taught using talking chips media have the same speaking skill as students who are taught using conventional media. Okay, we continue to chapter 3 about research method. First, research design. Here I use experimental design, which according to Gay 2009 is the only type of research that can test hypotheses to build a cause and effect relationship. And I conduct the pre-test, and then after that experimenting in doing experiment in control group, and I mean here experimental group, and conducting a post test to investigate the effectiveness of talking chips and student speaking skills. And then population and sample here. The population is the third grade student of SMA Pembangunan UNP from all majors. And the sample 50 students as a sample of this study using cluster sampling. 25 students will join the experimental group and 25 others will join the control group. And here the instrumentation is this study use speaking tests as an instrument to collect the data. And I create several questions, create my own question to be asked in interview for pre and also post interview. And then the way to apply it, I will use interview that will be applied in the form of unstructured interviews as instruments. Research, I will give 10 questions for each student. These 10 questions will be given after the study has been carried out in both groups, the experimental group and control groups. In other words, this is the post-test students will get. 10 items will be taken from student textbook used in classroom learning activities. And then the technique of data collection. First, I prepare the interview questions as a procedure for collecting the data, and then I calculate the scores of experimental group and also the control group students. And after that, I will compare the final score between the experimental group and also the control group. And then the technique of data analysis, I use a statistical analysis with a t-test and manual calculation. So here's the formula to find the TO, that means T observed value. And then if the result, if the TO is lower than the T table or significance is bigger than 0.05 at the 5% significant level, HO is accepted and HA is rejected, and vice versa. If TO is higher than T table or significance is lower than 0.05 at the 5% significance level, HO is rejected and HA is accepted. So the research procedure here, I by differentiating teaching procedure, pre-teaching, whilst teaching, and also post-teaching in experimental class and control class. So we are doing we make a differences between the sample of experimental group and also in control group. They get a different method in teaching. The experimental use talking chips, and also the control class will use the conventional method. So we will see later the result, whether it's whether the using talking chips is giving effects or not. So that's all my presentation. Thank you all for the your attention. Okay, maybe that's all my presentation about my research. Do you guys have any questions?
No, you did a great presentation.
Yeah, that's a great job.
Oh, okay.
I don't
Okay.
have any.
Thank you very much for your guys' attention, also appreciation. Or maybe that's all. If there is no more question, there is no question, I will end this presentation. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
Waalaikumsalam
warahmatullahi
warahmatullahi
wabarakatuh.
wabarakatuh.